In the last few sections, we've covered some very challenging content. So I want to take a second to review where we are and where we're going and what we've covered so far. If you feel like you're totally comfortable with everything we've been talking about, feel free to skip to the video. Otherwise, stick around for a little bit. So to review, we're building an application that will allow users to search for YouTube videos. So far, we've covered numerous core React topics, including JSX, components, and state inside of our search bar. Some of these topics have been interwoven with ES6. For example, we've discussed classes, arrow functions, and import and export statements. We also signed up for the YouTube API. So in particular in this section, I want to review our app's current structure. First, our app starts inside of index.js, where we define a base component called app. Index imports the component search bar into it, and then renders it inside of its render method, inside of the app component right here. Right now, app is a functional component because it doesn't have any concept of state. The search bar component and the app component demonstrate two different types of components in React: a class-based component and a functional-based component. Class-based components are used whenever we have a component that needs to be aware of state in some fashion. So, data is changing over time, we're reacting to user events, and we need to keep track of, some aspect of state from render pass to render pass. Functional components are used whenever we're just taking in some information and spitting out some JSX. Also very important to note that a functional component can contain a class-based component. Totally fine. Right now our app component is functional, but that's probably going to change later on whenever we start to import videos from the YouTube API. Finally, our search bar component makes use of state by updating the user input whenever the state changes. Whenever the user enters some text, we first update the state, which causes the entire component to re-render. We made the component, the input element here, a controlled component by telling it to receive its value from state. So believe it or not, in everything we've talked about so far, functional components and class-based components and state and JSX is probably 80% of the real core React topics. So we've gone through some really slow process so far, but the remaining amount of this app is actually going to go by much more quickly since we've gotten through a lot of the tough stuff already. React is really actually quite famous for having a very low API surface area. If you compare React to, say, Backbone or Angular, the list of methods included in Backbone, the different functionality of the framework is tremendous. It's huge in scope. Same with Angular. Well, relatively tremendous. Compared to React, where it's really very small function, very small API surface. The number of topics you need to understand is far fewer to get started. Okay, so now that we've done a little bit of a review here, a little bit of a breather, let's get continuing in the next section.